Hey artisans, time for some good news. In this electrifying episode, let's talk about how humans are much less likely to die from being struck by lightning than at any point in history. Allow me to explain. Artisans, there are a lot of good reasons to be depressed and anxious right now, but we're not going to talk about those. Instead, let's focus on the positive for the next 10 minutes while I tell you about how life is better for humans today than it was before in the history times. First, we need to discuss our fleeting mortality. Human life expectancy has made steady gains for probably thousands of years. Of course, we really only have reliable statistics from the past 100 years or so. Before that, the people in charge of counting deaths kept dying in the middle of counting. A lot of this improvement in life expectancy is driven by better odds of children and women surviving childbirth, as well as fewer childhood deaths. But today we are going to focus on the category of accidental deaths. That's when a person has no intention of dying, but then does so accidentally. Insurance companies define accidental death as an event that strictly occurs as a result of an accident. Well, that's a shitty definition. Good thing they also give examples. Deaths from car crashes, slips, choking, drowning, machinery, and any other situations that can't be controlled are deemed accidental. Good news! Most types of accidental deaths are decreasing. This includes deaths from drowning, falling, and poisonous gas. A notable exception is that poisoning from solids is actually increasing due to the opioid epidemic. But this is supposed to be a positive video, so I'm not even going to mention that. When it comes to accidental deaths, you can't get much more accidental than an act of nature. Overall deaths from natural disasters have decreased steadily worldwide for things like floods, earthquakes, and wildfires. But perhaps none of the decreases are as dramatic as the decrease in deaths due to lightning strikes. Check this out. Is Zeus becoming more tolerant in his old age? No. The decrease in the number of lightning strike deaths can be attributed to several modern changes, including fewer people living in rural areas, better medical treatment, and better weather prediction. Fewer people living in rural areas. The Census Bureau defines rural as any population, housing, or territory not in an urban area. That's also a shitty definition. Rural is basically defined as not living in a location with 2,500 or more people. More people live in cities today because not as many people need to work as farmers in order to produce the amount of food that society needs. This is thanks to advancements in machinery, plant genetics, and my little brother finally growing up and eating his pizza crusts. Living in urban areas keeps you safer from lightning strikes for a few reasons. The first is that urban areas have better storm warning systems and better electrical systems that prevent fires from lightning. The second is that city folk are more likely to work indoors than outdoors. Remember what I said about fewer farmers? Turns out farmers were a very at-risk population. Some old statistics even kept track of a separate category called tractors because farmers riding tractors got struck so often. The third reason is that lightning prefers to hit tall objects, and humans in urban areas are unlikely to be the tallest object around. And finally, another big reason is better access to healthcare services, which brings us to better medical treatment. If you are struck by lightning, today you have a high chance of surviving. In order to understand why, we first need to discuss why getting struck by lightning can kill a person. Lightning strikes injure people in several ways. They can burst your eardrums, they can burn you, and the explosive force can cause broken bones. But believe it or not, most of the lightning strike's energy doesn't actually go through a person's body if it doesn't have to. Instead, lightning often follows the outside surface of the skin in a phenomenon called a flashover. The energy turns sweat or rain on your skin into steam, which can have explosive effects. In fact, people's clothing is often blown off, and it's not uncommon to find footwear several feet away from the victim. Serious deep burns occur in fewer than 5% of cases. There are ways of getting superficial burns, such as if you are touching a metal object like a metal necklace, or if your clothes catch on fire. This is why Flavor Flav spends so much money on lightning insurance. But if it isn't the burns that kills a person, then what does? What kills a person struck by lightning is usually that the electrical systems of the human body are overwhelmed by the electrical current, which can severely damage muscles and nerves. The most important muscle of the human body is the heart. Lightning strikes cause heart attacks. But the heart can often recover from being stopped because it's smart enough to restart itself. Where the trouble really begins is if enough electrical current enters a person's nervous system. If it enters the skull, it can fry a vital piece of your brain that knows how to breathe. Kind of important. Electricity entering a person's nervous system frequently knocks them unconscious. And if their heart stops and/or they stop breathing, they'd better hope that help is nearby to provide first aid. Here's a figure that I found listing immediate and delayed effects of being struck by lightning. Curiously, I noticed that decreased libido or impotence was listed under immediate effects. I guess there's nothing sexy about being struck by lightning. Although, apparently, ejaculation of semen may occur. So I guess there's one thing sexy about being struck by lightning. Medical workers have gotten so good at restarting people's hearts and breathing that even people who appear to be dead after a lightning strike can often be saved. But even if we save the lives of people struck by lightning, there are often lingering side effects, including problems with memory and concentration. There are several theories about why the brain can suffer long-term effects after lightning strikes, but there's still a lot that we don't know. Most people who are injured by lightning strikes are not struck directly. Instead, the lightning strikes nearby and the electrical current then travels through their body. This is called a ground current, and it is the most common cause of injury due to a lightning strike. This happens because it's easier for electrical current to pass through the human body than it is to pass through solid ground. Because of this, if your feet are far apart, the lightning bolt is likely to use your legs as a shortcut to skip passing through some of the ground. However, if your feet are close together, the lightning bolt is less likely to use you as a path because the shortcut isn't worth taking. This is also why large four-legged farm animals like cows frequently die from lightning strikes, because their legs are far apart. If only cows would stand on 2 feet, they'd be less likely to die. I have had some success in training my cat to stand on her hind legs, so farmers, hit me up. Better weather prediction. Historically, people often relied on the behaviors of animals in order to predict the weather. For example, in the 1800s, some people kept tree frogs inside of glass jars. They would put a little pool of water at the bottom and then provide a tiny ladder. Tree frogs were believed to climb higher in trees to look for food when the weather was nice. So the reasoning was that tree frogs would climb higher on their tiny ladders when the weather was nice and retreat back into the water when rain was coming. Sounds to me like they were leaping to conclusions. It was also in the 1800s that the first weather forecasts were made. In the UK in the year 1854, an MP named John Ball gave a speech to the House of Commons. He told his fellow politicians that, "In a few years, we might know in this metropolis the condition of the weather 24 hours beforehand." This suggestion was met with laughter. The idea of predicting the weather a full day ahead of time was indeed laughable at the time. Weather systems contain incredibly complicated dynamics that, historically, changed faster than humans could gather and analyze the data. But humans slowly got better at it with improved communication technology between weather stations. Once we had the ability to gather data from a bunch of different places at the same time, we became a lot better at predictions. In the 1950s, people began using computers to help analyze the data that was collected. And the modern supercomputer designed to model weather can run in under 15 minutes what would have taken 600 years to process on computer systems in the 1960s. Even with supercomputers, we still suck at making accurate predictions even just a few days out, let alone weeks or months. Right now, our 7-day forecasts are pretty good, but anything further out than 2 weeks is a big ol' question mark. That's because of chaos theory. Let's not talk about chaos theory though, because I'm pretty sure all of the words in this book were randomly arranged. Unless some crazy technology developed by our eventual robot overlords proves physicists completely wrong, we will never be able to perfectly predict weather. But that's okay, we're already good enough to save many lives with advanced storm warnings. So there's a bit of good news to reflect on during these synonym for trying times. Life for humans used to be so much more brutal and short, and we've come a long way. Speaking of good news, this video was made as a collaboration with members of We Create EDU. Please go check out the other good news videos on that playlist once you're done with this video. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you next time.